Ember Witch. Book 1. The Lich. Volume 1. Black Tragedy. Chapter 2. The Nightmare Begins. September 8, 457 to October 17, 458 BME. Fragment 8. Training. It had been only a week into his new life. Fevra was panting, his muscles ached and his body was sore in every place imaginable. Vera extended her hand and a dark red sword materialized in it. Fevra readied himself, placing his sword arm in position and his feet perfect. Vera rushed forward swinging her conjured weapon while Fevra tried to block the incoming attacks with a dagger. Vera moved quickly to his left swinging high and Fevra put up the dagger and pushed back her sword. He thrust out his free hand and a wave of color blasted Vera back a few feet. She caught her footing and attacked again. The two went back and forth trading slashes and magic. One attack went high and another low, each of them clashing with explosive sound. Cress was watching from the side as Vera and Fevra went against each other in a beautiful dance of death. Cress was still on edge after last week but had been trying to not make things awkward. Fevra hadn't said a word about it. It wasn't that he had to, but Cress felt as if they had left off on the wrong foot. Fevra didn't have the time to talk about anything. His schedule was so tightly controlled by Vera that even if Cress had the courage to talk about what had happened, Fevra wouldn't be able to take the time to listen. Fevra ducked beneath a high swing and used the blade of his dagger to disarm Vera. Her blade fell to the ground, then shattered into a splash of color and sparks. He took this opportunity to get in a quick leg sweep, but Vera had felt his intention and was jumping over him before he could move. She spun around and pushed a force of energy into his back, flipping him over, which caused him to roll on the floor several times.
Get up now,"
Vera yelled in frustration. Fevra struggled to his feet and faced her. The two went at it again, each trading blows as Cress studied their techniques and use of color. After being kneed in the stomach, Fevra finally had enough and fell to his knees, gasping for air.
"You are pathetic. I thought you were a mighty hunter, but all I see is a whimpering puppy. That's enough for today. Go take a bath, you reek of sweat and shame,"
Vera said with anger, then threw a small towel on the ground next to him. Fevra, after catching his breath, grabbed the towel and wiped his mouth clean after spitting up a small amount of blood. He struggled to his knees and looked up to Vera.
"Why do you insist on being so fucking pathetic? It's been a week and you haven't even beaten me once,"
Vera complained. Fevra stood up and pulled energy to him.
"I'm not finished yet,"
he said as his aura glowed vibrantly around him.
"You can barely stand. Are you sure you want to go another round?"
Vera said, getting into her stance.
"Let me have this one, Vera,"
Cress said, approaching the two. Vera rolled her eyes and backed away. Fevra looked puzzled, but he had already committed to this, so he stayed ready. Cress stepped to Fevra and calmly unlatched her cloak and dropped it to the floor. Fevra watched as Cress took her time preparing. Her slender legs now in a ready stance, still in the long stockings that ran to mid-thigh. Fevra was too focused to allow for Cress to use her clothing as a distraction. Cress took in a deep breath, then extended her color. A deep yellow glow flowed around her body. Fevra was about to move, but Cress reacted first. She was up in the air, bringing her boot down into Fevra's head before he could react. Cress's boot forced Fevra into the floor with a crunch. He tried to roll over, but Cress was on top of him in an instant. They clashed for a moment, then Fevra rolled back to his feet. He conjured a long blade and swung at Cress, who ducked and retaliated with her own conjured blade. They crossed swords back and forth, getting into a rhythm. Vera watched as the two danced around each other like a ballet. She felt the two's energy spark and crash against each other as their blades collided. It had been a long time since Vera had seen Cress fight this intensely, and she was thoroughly impressed by Fevra's new-found vigor. Cress swung high, letting the blade trail a faint line of color as it sped through the air. Fevra blocked the attack and used his body's momentum to push Cress back a few feet. They stepped in sync with each movement they made. Their color clashed again and again, but Fevra, already exhausted from his fight with Vera, was slow to react after each attack. He began to falter in his strikes, giving Cress the opportunity to use her momentum to step directly to Fevra. Cress grabbed his arm, making Fevra drop his sword. She spun around, pulling Fevra close, and stabbed her blade into his stomach. Just before the blade made contact, it disappeared as the two stood just as close as they did a week ago. Fevra looked into Cress's eyes as they finished their dance, and Cress did the same. They stepped away quickly, letting their oars drop.
Well done, you two. I almost thought you were going to kiss,
Vera said as she clapped slowly. Cress picked up her cloak and walked past Vera without saying a word. Fevra looked at Vera, then back to Cress, who walked out of the training room, nearly slamming the door behind her.
You're not half bad. When you're properly motivated. Next we will work on your alchemy, but for now you can go after your girlfriend.
I'll be in their bath.
Fevra said angrily and walked past Vera. She scoffed and let him leave. She had to push him in every aspect. After a week, he still pushed out his dark presence. She didn't care about hurting his feelings if it was to make him stronger. It didn't matter to her, only the end results did. She stood there just watching him leave with a satisfied grin. She had learned a lot today. Fevra was easy to pressure, quick to make mistakes when his pride was hurt, and extremely hard to keep down. She had to break down his pride and rebuild him into the perfect killer. He was already showing impressive talent, but he still had a long way to go. Fevra walked quickly through the hall, but stopped short as a door swung open unexpectedly.
Good morning. Do you happen to know what day it is?
Takashi asked with a yawn as he stepped into the hall.
It's Wednesday.
Fevra answered with worry.
Oh, Kellis, it is? I better get moving. I'm afraid I've slept too long.
Takashi said, then closed his door and walked away. Fevra was in a state of pure confusion. He had just met Takashi after a week, and he wasn't even sure if he'd noticed that he was a new member and a Lyran. Confused and angry, he made his way to the hot spring, thoughts swirling in his mind. The moment he opened the door, his face went cold. His eyes caught sight of the back of Cress as she took small steps into the steaming water. Entirely nude and unaware of his interruption, she sat down and began scrubbing her arms. He shut the door quickly, hoping that she hadn't noticed him, and made his way to his room with guilt in his heart.